If you own a Bernina 880 and want to work with twin needles or double needles, I have all the tricks that you need to know for getting the machine threaded correctly and what you're capable of doing with those types of needles. So first off, we do love to use twin needles with decorative stitches. You do see one of my favorite stitches on my Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course quilt. I think I love it because it's the lime green that I am partial to, but I've put 2 threads in a twin needle and stitched a sideways motion stitch. Here we did it with just a utility stitch, and then of course with just a 9mm decorative stitch. So if you want to add a little wow to your next project, think about what your capabilities are with a twin needle, especially with decorative stitches. So twin needles come in all different sizes, and traditionally you do see them used for top stitching, especially on knit fabrics like down at the hem or on a sleeve. You will see that it's actually a cover stitch that's done when it's done in the industry, but you can totally duplicate that with a twin needle. You'll notice twin needles come in all different sizes, usually noted by how wide they are. So this one says 2.5, that's 2.5 millimeters wide. This one says 8.0. Yes, that is a super large twin needle. You can use that on your Bernina 880. Here's a 3.0 twin needle, and here's even a 4.0. So I usually like to keep all different sizes on hand, but I'm going to show you how you'll be able to see what it's going to look like, especially for the decorative stitches, before you even stitch it out. And then we're going to go into threading. There's a couple very important steps if you want to successfully thread your 880 sewing machine for a twin needle. So let's just say we're going to use a 3.0 twin needle. You'll notice there's another number right beside that. It says slash. On this one, 90. So those are 2 size 90 needles. So you can actually get twin needles with different sizes of needles. So some are stretch needles, some are 80s, some are 90s. There's different sizes based on the fabric you will be using. So just go ahead and note that there's lots to have, and having a few extras of your favorite size, not a bad idea, just in case you break one. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is I'm going to go into where it says 9 millimeters in the picture of the throat plate and tell the machine that I'm about to put that needle on, 3.0. And let's leave this stitch plate, of course, at 9 millimeters, so that's all we're going to activate. As soon as you activate it, you'll get a twin needle size here on the machine, and you'll notice that you have double what you're looking at. So as you pick a stitch, you're going to see exactly what it's going to look like when 3.0 to 3.0 needles join together with 2 different threads. You're going to see different fun stitches, even with the utility stitches. We haven't even checked out yet what it could look like when we have our decorative stitches involved. This one's one of my favorites because it just gives a whole new look. So if you are stitching out your stitch book, you can literally start over with every single stitch. No, I won't make you. But take some of your favorite stitches and stitch them out when you put your twin needle on and see what it looks like, especially when you start to mix and match different colors of thread, even put a variegated thread and a solid color together. It really is unlimitless what you can actually come up with. But here's one thing that I'm going to show you. So see how these just practically look like 2 parallel stitches? And that's because I picked a 3.0 twin needle. So what if we come back in here and we picked a 2.0 or even a 1.6? 2.0 is usually what most people get. Look at the difference in that stitch. It looks totally different because the amount of overlap changes because that 1 millimeter difference in the needle spacing. So what you see in one stitch will look a little bit different. Let's just switch that back here if it is a 3.0 twin needle. So that one didn't change too much, but here, let's put it to 4.0. So here is the moral of the story. If you want more bang for your buck when it comes to decorative stitches and twin needles, use a narrower twin needle. So 1.6 or 2.0 is usually what I recommend in our Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course. And then you'll get the most fun looking stitches. And I love just coming through here and just tapping them because you can actually see what they're going to look like. It's like virtual sewing here. I love it. see what it's going to look like. You might pile up a few times with some of the stitches. That looks kind of, a lot of overlap. So just note that maybe some of these stitches are not going to turn out as exciting as if you were to just do them at the normal settings. So just kind of keep them in mind. You're definitely going to need to play around with it. Sometimes I've even recommended that you lengthen out that stitch just enough. So again, there's room for those 2 stitches to overlap, or 2 threads, because they will be joining each other, usually in some part of that stitch. So if they're a heavier stitch to start off with, that might not be a bad idea. Test it out, and now's the important part. How do you thread for a twin needle? Number 1, your needle threader is not to be used with a twin needle. It's just going to hit it, not be fun. But you do have to actually go through the steps of threading your needles, and I want to show you how you override that. Plus, there's a place right up here on the back side where we need to separate the 2 threads when we're threading through the normal threading path. So I'm going to go back to a straight stitch. We're going to start there. I think I am going to put on my 2.5 twin needle. So this will be the one we use, and we'll take a look and stitch out some of these stitches. Don't you just love having the extra spool pins on your thread stand for times like this, for threading for a twin needle? So take both the threads that you have in your hand, and we're going to come underneath. First, remember, we pause as we activate this setting. And if you want to do it right now, reach on screen. This is what's going to stop the machine from actually using the needle threader. So as we do that, we're going to then bring them across, but right here where that little fin is, this part here is going to separate the threads. So you're going to put one on one side and one on the other. So I'm going to keep a little tension as I come across. I'm going to separate them in my hand so I can see one goes behind and one goes in front of that. You know what that does? That gives each thread its own tension. So that way everything is going to be as it should be. Next, go ahead and put the thread through the last guide right above the needle. And you can do one of 2 things. You can go ahead and use your handheld needle threader and put the threads manually through each needle. It doesn't matter which one goes through which. Just pick one, put one through the right and one through the left. But what you must do is actually touch the lit up needle threader button. So it's not going to actually swing down and around like it normally does, but what it does do is put the thread into the take-up lever behind this magic curtain right here. And I can feel that it kind of got put there. I felt it on my hands. We have done a video on how to use the handheld needle threader, but I'll just walk you through those steps quickly. I'm going to lower the presser foot just to give myself a little bit more room. You hold the needle threader straight up and down, and then you place the thread gently in his mouth, just enough for it to sit in that groove. Bring the needle threader a little bit up onto the needle and then slide down. When you slide all the way down, there's a little tongue that will push a loop of thread through the eye of the needle that you manually pull through. So here we go. I'm going to just kind of twist this around. So I'm holding it straight up and down. My thread is going in his mouth like a little horse's bridle. I push it all the way in and I have that little loop. So if anytime your needle threader isn't cooperating, you do have a way to thread your needle. So I'm going to just start first with just testing my straight stitch. That's just what I'm on. I want to make sure that everything is threaded correctly. You'll know immediately if it's not. Since I have my foot 40 on, I am going to just clip these threads. It doesn't have one of those little thread escapes, because what I want to do is actually do this stitch next. Once I realize, oh yeah, everything's looking beautiful, I'm going to go ahead and pick that sideways motion stitch number, that one's number 507, and it is ready to stitch even with a twin needle. So you can just go ahead. It kind of looks a little bit different when it stitches, but that's part of just trying out all these different ones and trying out with different needle choices. So, oh my goodness, this is going to be so fun. I got the, kind of looks a little Halloween-like when we're stitching all the way through. This would be something where I'm realizing my thinner thread, which is my Embroidery weight thread is something I might shorten the stitch length with just a little bit. Maybe I'll do it here, and then I'll stitch one more out with the newly adjusted stitch length. You can use your thread cutter just like normal, and look at that. How, ooh, I really like those colors coming together. And do remember that if you do want a free motion quilt, you want to use it with your stitch regulator, you can put a twin needle on and do all that fun stitching with those particular techniques and feet. And if these tips have been helpful for you, make sure you give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel.